Welcome, everybody. It's exactly 10 a.m. We had about 40, 50 people in the lobby moments ago. You saw me wait a little bit, believe it or not. Teams Live, we're excited about this. Excited to have everybody here. And Teams Live, you have to give yourself 20 minutes to kick off. From the nation's capital, it's Orangutech Seminars Live. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. You know, I wanted to really congratulate and welcome the Government of Canada IT community. The last 4 years I've been saying I have never seen the Government of Canada IT community as dialed in, as engaged, as empowered as I have over the last 4 years. I would say the last 7 months, you guys have killed it. You've done a phenomenal job. And I would say that you have proved that to your clients, you've proved that to your departments, and you've proved that to the citizens of Canada. So many positives. I was at the DPI Gala last week, and they had online, of course, and they had awarded so many great awards for the IT community focused on helping the citizens of Canada. So welcome, congratulations on all the great efforts you've put into this. Just a couple of administrative points. This is Teams Live. We will answer questions at the end. If you'd like to ask questions, type them out. We'll post them. As many votes, the questions with more votes, so you can vote for a question, we'll ask those questions. So we'll leave that to the end. Ask as many questions as you'd like. Again, thank you for everybody for joining us. Government of Canada IT community, guys, you rock. Our presentation today is Workflow for Humans, Forms, Workflow, and e-signatures on Microsoft 365. A shared services Canada case study. We have two presenters. Mr. Jess McCarhue is going to kick off first. Jess is a technical evangelist from Nintex. He's got 5 slides. He wants to introduce you to Nintex, and he's going to do that introduction. And after Jess is done, we're going to introduce Mr. Tim Peterson, who is the Chief Delivery Officer of Orangutech. Tim's been involved with the Shared Services Canada project since day one. He's going to talk to you about what the issues were. He's going to give you the outcomes, and then he's going to walk through the solution. So Jess, over to you, sir. Welcome, everybody, and thank you for joining. Jess, you're up.
Excellent, excellent. All right, so thank you for having us. I want to say that, and pleasure to be here today to talk to everybody. So let's kind of level set in terms of kind of what we do here at Nintex. If you're unfamiliar with Nintex, kind of who we are and what we do, our main mission is really just as it says there, right? Improve the way that people work through process management and automation, right? And we really take that to heart. We want to automate as much as possible. We want to improve the way that you do business, right? The day-to-day. We were founded back in 2006 in Australia. We then moved our headquarters over to Bellevue, Washington, right down the street from Microsoft. We have over 500 employees worldwide. We're actually going to be gaining a lot more with current acquisition news that you may have heard of. And we've been profitable since the inception. That means since day one, we've been profitable year over year. And the reason for that is that Net Promoter Score. That's over 75. And if you're unfamiliar with Net Promoter Score, what that really means is what our customers think about us. That's not Nintex going out there and saying, vote for us. That's not us, asking, how likely are you to, recommend this. That's the customer saying that we like you guys, that we like the product, that we want to do more with Nintex. And, the other companies in this space are generally around anywhere between 30 to 40. There's some that are up in the 50s, but to be at a 75, almost at 80 now, it's really, really impressive. And I'm really proud of that fact, because again, those are the customers that are saying those things. So what do we kind of do also in terms of like, how large are we? What can we handle? Our market scale is pretty vast. We do billions with a B of process executions annually across the board. We have more than 8,000 customers worldwide. We have a bunch of them in a lot of different countries, and we work with hundreds of partners like the folks here at Orangutech. So really proud to be working with you guys today and to be able to share kind of what Nintex does. So what do we solve for though? right? What does a typical effort look like in terms of what we're trying to solve? So a study that McKinsey did recently showed that about 70% of enterprise processes are still highly manual. And the reason why is really because of kind of, a few different factors. You have the really, really complex, those hard to implement processes, it's hard to implement solutions where you need a very heavy coded solution to put in place. Nobody likes to do that. Nobody wants to support it. On the other end of the spectrum, you have kind of the very lack of power solutions that are very simple, right? We just need to send an email, things like that. But then also too, that big chunk in the middle is, well, we don't really know what we're doing because we don't have visibility, right? Very much so siloed across the organization. I'm responsible for my piece, and then I hand it off and I don't know what they do, things like that. The nice thing with Nintex is we can cover all of that. We really do focus in on kind of that middle section where it's not overly complex, but it's not super simple. We can certainly handle those and go into depth. And I think Tim's going to talk about some of the really cool and complex things that he did. But really, we like to focus in on to make the business run smoother, right? To help you manage and automate your different processes. So what are the pieces of that Nintex platform, right? What do we have to offer in terms of the overall, structure that we have? So at Nintex, we work with just about any line of business that you work with today, whether that be Office 365, whether that be things like Oracle, whether that just be a homegrown system, right, that you've built yourself. And we start off with kind of in that middle of that diagram. One of the tools that we offer is called Nintex ProMap, and that is for mapping out your different processes. Answers the age-old question of what do we do? What is the process? And that tool allows us to not only map out those things, but then also catalog your different process to understand the roles and responsibilities for those that are involved in it. Where are the handoffs, right? How much time are we spending? Things like that. So then once you've documented out your processes, now you can move into the automation, right? You can select those that are ripe for automation, what's a good candidate, and things like that. And then we have tools around automation such as RPA, or robotic process automation, forms and workflow technology inside of SharePoint on-prem, SharePoint Online, and then also inside of Nintex Workflow Cloud, which is our cloud-based platform that we have. Not only that, but we also partnered with Adobe for e-signature. So we have Nintex Sign powered by Adobe Sign, and document generation as well, both inside of Salesforce as well as Nintex Workflow Cloud. So those are really nice things. Once you've automated things, the next logical step is, well, I need to start measuring it, right? I need to start understanding, did I actually improve on this? Do I still have gaps? Did I create a bottleneck in my process? So kind of wrapping all of that together, we have our Nintex Analytics, which allows us to answer just those questions, right? Of understanding what are we actually doing in terms of SLAs, things like that. At the very bottom there, you also see we have an extension framework. I like to consider this as like our catch-all, where we can't offer out of the box connectors into every single platform that is out there. There's just too many, and they're growing daily. So what we did is we took the approach of why not build out an extension framework that allows you to build out your own custom actions that you can then use inside of our product. So that's something that we actually have built out, and we're pretty proud of that. And so kind of the next logical question now comes in is, well, what kind of activities can we automate, right? What is the tool good for, and things like that. Now, there's a lot of things that we can apply it for, but for the sake of the conversation today, there's a lot of things in the public sector that we work with on a daily basis. Everything from the administration of doing certain like budgeting things, applications, all the way down to defense, right? Things that need to be highly secured or in lockdown environments and things like that. And I'm sure, Barry, you probably have a lot of insight into a lot of different activities that you guys have seen as well, right?
Yes, absolutely do. And maybe just flip the next one and I'll go through some of that just briefly if you want to.
Excellent. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Jess. So everybody, thanks for seeing it's a really active session already. People asking questions and making comments. I'm hoping people's networks keep working. You can see these are all public sector clients in Canada. They're all our clients, all except NovaPost, but everyone is Orangutech based clients. You know, one of the things that you should know about Nintex, it's probably the largest and most sold software product in the SharePoint world, and certainly in the Office 365 world worldwide. I know of one major consulting company in the United States that told me that they do not implement a project in SharePoint without, you know, bringing Nintex to the forefront. We have introduced this to the Canadian federal government, and everyone's doing a lot of different very interesting workflow projects. LAC, Library Archives Canada, has been using it for a long time. I was actually speaking to them on Monday, and they have been using it for such a long time. We once did what's called Know Your Workflow, and it's actually a tool, and you can look at how many workflows they have. They have upwards of 500 or 600 workflows, and they actually run 50 to 60,000 workflows of those 500 to 600 workflows on a monthly basis. And they've automated simple things like, how about getting a parking pass? It used to be paper-based. Now it's all workflow-based. And the one that I thought was very interesting is this whole, I'm going to hire somebody, and you know, we're going to do the whole approval thing, and it goes up to a director. He or she can look at the entire process. You know, we put an ad out, we got 10,000 applications, we interviewed 100 people or 100 people. We've actually got down to final 10. Here's the job offer we'd like to give this one person. You know, the director can see it, approve it, then it goes off to the director general. So you can see this whole process. That would be a fairly complex one. IDRC actually did a phenomenal presentation recently on a travel. If you think that you're an IDRC employee and you want to travel to, say, 7 countries over 7 months ago, the 7 countries, you know, over a month, you know, what's the easiest and best way to do this? They actually had a workflow that would go out to the travel agencies, tell you, and book the planes for you and the hotels for you. Quite a secure environment. It was very, as you can imagine, detailed workflow. Any of these you'd like to talk about some other time, we'd love to talk to you. We're going to turn it over to Tim now, as I mentioned, and Tim's going to talk about the SSC case study. What was the problem? What was the outcomes? What's the solution? Over to you, Tim. Thank you very much, Jess.
Thanks, Jess. Thanks, Barry, and welcome everybody. And thanks for taking some time out of your day to join us on. I'll just add one item to Barry's list of administration duties, if you will, that if anyone happens to see a fly land on my head, just raise your hand up in the team session and let somebody know. I don't want it to sit there for 30 minutes. Thanks. On to the next slide here. Okay, so back in April, end of April, we began having conversations with SSC in the post work from office world that we were suddenly thrust into, about how can we and use technology to enable work better in the work from home world than it currently is, and what people were used to in the work from office world. It's hard to believe it's been 7 months since we left the office, almost 7 months to the day, I think, next week. And I think we've all adapted very well to this, but I think that picture in the slide here, probably either we are those people or we can relate to those people and we work with those people. It's been an interesting journey to figure out how do we work from home and how can we make our work tools work better for us under increasing loads. You know, early on, and I think, as Barry mentioned, the federal government has adapted amazingly well to the challenges that were thrown in front of them. But early on, there was questions about VPN overloads and not having the bandwidth to suddenly support this massive workforce logging in remotely, and even having to schedule times during the day where they could log on or not log on and so on, which made it difficult to access those traditional work from office processes that people were used to. On top of that, there was just a rising volume of requests and work to be done on top of everything that was being done, shifting priorities and being able to adapt to the new demand. And I've heard comments from some of our clients saying that, you know, it was not uncommon to work 10, 12 hours a day or more, oftentimes back-to-back meetings and never getting a break to so much as go to the bathroom in some cases. It was a heavy load off the bat, and a lot to adapt to. And then I guess, you know, finally, as we started having these initial conversations with Shared Services Canada around what can we do to better process and approve requests, that the initial idea was that, well, let's try to enable this on mobile devices, because we're all very much remote and mobile, and we're tied more to our mobile devices more than ever. That was kind of the initial conversations, was how can we make in this case approvals and e-signatures work from our mobile devices, and that's kind of where the conversation started. So when we kind of dug into the details of the problems being faced, we were able to categorize them into 3 buckets here that you see on the screen. Number 1, as I mentioned, was the inability to approve requests on mobile devices, and not just approve them, but sign them in accordance to the standards set forth in the federal government. So, you know, the inability to apply certified digital signatures on mobile devices didn't exist. And in fact, when we started talking to different vendors about what was done elsewhere, we found out that actually nobody was doing this, not even in the US federal government. It's just something that wasn't being done. And so we kind of had to go through the problem and determine what it was we were going to do about it. You know, on top of that, there's difficulties interacting with PDFs on mobile devices, obviously, and the inability to easily store these signed requests in the official repository and into GC Docs was also something that was brought up. In addition to that, though, we kind of go beyond the mobile challenges. Was more when the business stakeholders started looking at the problems around the process and inefficiencies around actually processing requests. We kind of learned a little bit more than the problem being just, you know, how do we solve this digital signature problem. And it's probably something that a lot of you are already used to, where multiple documents are flying back and forth in email, and maybe not in email, maybe you've already moved over to Teams, but there's this overload of documentation associated with even one request process that was causing a lot of confusion in regards to requests that were coming in. And I'll talk about the specific use cases that we picked for this project in the coming slides here, but also that there were some challenges around, on top of having multiple sets of documents for the process, you had to have 2 sets to deal with the bilingual requirements in some cases. So they wanted to look at what could be done to slim down and simplify that process. And then, you know, finally, just usability issues with existing request documents that slowed down the process. And we'll talk about the details of that as we move forward. And then finally, addressing the issue of just errors in submission. So aside from inefficiencies, there was just, when people filled out requests, there was either fields missing or incorrect data input into the forms, and they wanted to address that. So they thought, if we can do all of these things, we should be able to realize a good benefit from this engagement. So then as we discuss these challenges, then we turn to, okay, what is it that we'll do to address these problems, and what technologies will we use? So we come up with a proposal for mobile-enabled automation, and we broke it down into these 4 quadrants of what we would try and address. The 2 processes that we chose to focus on, and there was a long list of things that the department wanted to tackle, but for a variety of reasons, based on, well, that particular department is swamped right now. They'd love to fix their problems, but they just can't deal with it right now, or there was some just lower priority or higher complexity, whatever the case was. We landed on these 2 processes. So one is the sole source procurement. So that is, as many of you be familiar with, is just how do we procure services and hire employees and so on internally. And the other is the classification action request, which is just the management of classifications for jobs and contractors in the federal government, and changes to that system and requests for new indeterminate employees and so on. So those are the 2 processes. As I mentioned, the 4 quadrants that we focused on were, first of all, process improvements here in the upper left-hand corner. You really wanted to take everything in these processes and boil them down into a single workflow. So simplifying that end user experience by just taking a lot of the logic and flow away from multiple documents and multiple interfaces, and bring that all into one single workflow. On top of that, be able to integrate with other line of business systems, including the Entrust digital certificates and the classification database list, and so on. Take some of those error-prone entries away from the end user, and let rules and mandatory fields and so on, and controls handle the data quality side of the solution. And as I've also mentioned here, review all the business rules and then hide them within the forms and workflow. So as people walk through the process of filling out a request, they're only shown the information that they need to be shown, and not a whole bunch of other information that you typically see on a PDF form. The classic for administration use only bucket at the bottom of the form, that it's just not relevant to a lot of the people that submit requests. And then finally, on the process improvement side, being able to automatically generate the approved documents and digitally sign them from mobile devices as well as from the desktop. So those were the kind of the 4 key areas of process improvement we focus on. We also put a big focus on the usability side of things. We wanted to simplify and focus a lot on the end user here. A lot of the PDFs that they currently had in place for these 2 processes were good, but they still weren't perfect. They were still experiencing problems with people filling them out correctly. So we wanted to focus on standardizing the form entries and creating some mandatory fields so that people don't accidentally submit their requests with missing data where data is absolutely required, and then create this guided user experience where, as you're familiar on a lot of websites, where you're kind of walking through and stepping through the process, and you're being shown things only that you need to fill out, and not a whole bunch of extraneous information that isn't relevant to your specific type of request within this process. And so down below in the lower right, then we have integrate with line of business solutions. That was the work that was done to connect the process improvement environment and the usability environment with the mobile enabled solution. So we investigated a variety of different options but landed on leveraging the Azure cloud to handle some of the translations and passing back and forth of information between the two environments. And then finally, the mobile enabled a part of this where we want to be able to sign these requests that we've approved from our mobile device in an easy to use fashion and ensure that what we're signing is the right document and it's being signed by the right person. So also creating some two-factor authentication there to ensure that the right person is responding to the request. That's kind of the overview of the proposal here that we put forward. What were the results of all this? We had some very positive outcomes out of this. As you can see in the quote here, the testers and users reported the solution was significantly easier to use, faster to complete, and did not require any special business expertise. And that really was a testament to the amount of focus that went into determining all these rules and stepping through the process early in the project. On the sole source procurement side of the solution, we were able to reduce the process steps by 40% over the previous process, and we were able to reduce request completion time by 57%. And those were actually conservative numbers. Like they seen in some cases it was even better than that. So they were really pleased with that, and that one was particularly well received because that was one that had a lot of different documentations in the process. There was statements of work to fill out. There was security documents to fill out. There was vendor information to fill out, all in separate documents. We brought that all into one step and really reduce the time to completion. On the other side of the solution was the classification action request. So we were able to reduce the process steps by 41% and the request completion time by 38%. On top of those benefits, and I'm going to just skip over mobile enabled processes for a moment and talk about error reduction. Those improvements are simply the user experience improvements that were monitored. The error reduction improvements by eliminating missing information and eliminating data entry errors is where it really added on to the efficiency of the process, on top of those rather impressive numbers that you see up top there. So not having to deal with the back and forth of you forgot this field or this data is incorrect, you have to resubmit the request and so on. The whole package together is getting closer to the 75% range when you talk about real improvement. So it was very well received. And then of course, kind of as a side note to this, where we originally started was, allow me to be able to digitally sign documents from mobile devices. We delivered that. It was successful. But in the end, it was one of many successful things that we were able to accomplish based on the initial request. So next, I'll talk about the bits of the solution that we put into place. So there's really four main parts of the solution. Number one here is the Nintex forms and workflow environment. So we use Nintex on Microsoft 365 to handle all the electronic forms and workflow automation in this solution. So that provided both the builders and designers this drag and drop easy to use workflow designer, drag and drop easy to use eForms builder, where we also embedded all the rules-based logic for the UI components, and that the notifications that came out of all these workflows were integrated with the Microsoft 365 environment, keeping in mind that we did need that to be able to work on mobile devices as well. So something to overcome there a little bit, and that we also included in that process automation platform the ability to integrate and generate, integrate with Entrust and generate digital signatures on PDFs, as well as the Azure components that I'll get to in a moment. So the platform everything is sitting on, obviously, is the government's Microsoft 365 tenant. That hosts all the Nintex components, that hosts all the electronic forms and the builder tools, and those forms are accessible either in SharePoint Online or in the Microsoft Teams environment. So we left it up to the users and departments where they would how they would distribute and make accessible the request forms. That platform also hosts all the workflow logic built in Nintex 365, and then finally, the Microsoft 365 environment is also the records management integration component with GC Docs. So it's doing the content management and lists and libraries to handle all the requests, to store all the requests, to store all the generated documents, and to provide the ability to then submit those as records into GC Docs. The Azure components is just simply, again, hosted in the government's Azure cloud. That part of the equation was implemented to handle the translation of requests from Microsoft 365 to Entrust, because Entrust has a REST API and Microsoft and 365 has Entrust has a SOAP API, Microsoft has the REST API. So we needed something to be a language translator in the middle there and take the request from workflow and pass them on to the Entrust environment. The Entrust Identity Guard solution was what was used to enable e-signatures on mobile devices. So if you were just doing e-signatures within the on-prem environment, this part of the Entrust suite of products isn't required, but to enable that mobile piece, we implemented Identity Guard. It can be integrated with the MyKey infrastructures so that you don't have to be managing multiple accounts, and you can leverage all your existing personal keys in MyKey. And that this solution also ended up integrating with Microsoft 365 through the Azure API service. And as I mentioned before, this is what provides the ability to electronically sign and approve, but sign the generated PDFs. So I'll talk a little bit about each of the bits of the components here a little bit. First off, workflow. So as I mentioned before, it's an easy to use drag and drop interface, as you can see on the right there. We did no custom coding in this solution. So this was truly drag and drop and configuration. And the workflow and logic behind a lot of this was fairly complex, and we were able to accomplish everything that we did without writing a line of code on the workflow side. This allowed us to also integrate with other line of business systems without complex coding, certainly for the SharePoint side of the equation. I'll get to the Azure bit later. And also that the solution does include logging and auditing capabilities for compliance. So we want to know when was something signed, who signed it, has anything been altered, who altered it, what are things in progress, what are things holding up in the workflow process, and so on. All of that hosted inside this environment. And again, any notifications that come out of this as tasks assigned to people for approval or tasks assigned to requesters for revisions, all of that is hosted in this environment as well and enabled for mobile devices. On the interface side of the equation, we have our Nintex eForms. So again, drag and drop, no custom coding. There was a lot of rules building involved in these processes, and it was good to go through that exercise because it exposed a lot of inefficiencies in the process. it was fun to actually do this project and see, wow, we get to take all this onerous, ambiguous stuff out of the request process and just put it into rules logic in the background and just let people get on with doing their work and not having to, spend a lot of time and ask a lot of questions how to submit these forms. So yeah, and again, available on mobile devices and available in both official languages, all in one form. So we didn't have to build a separate form for specifically for all the different mobile devices out there. They're all responsive forms. We didn't have to build a separate form for official languages. We integrated the English and French all into one form and used rules to expose what should be displayed to the end user based on their language of choice. And yeah, all that was done in the Nintex eForms environment. On the Microsoft 365 side of the equation, as I mentioned before, this is the backbone of the solution. So this is where all your requests will be stored. This is where all the documents will be generated. This is what manages the content of the request system. And this is also what is used to integrate with GC Docs for records management. On top of that, it's also the host of the request launch point, if you will. So you can either initiate requests via the SharePoint environment or via Microsoft Teams, it doesn't matter. And you can also have notifications funnel through team channels if you like, rather than forwarding them to email. So those options are all available there. And finally, this provides the the secure environment for the builders to work in the government cloud. On the Azure side of the equation, this was a little more complex. This required custom coding, but the solution was built fairly quickly. We were able to build the API translation service in Azure using the app services. We were able to grab document hash IDs and user authentication IDs and associate that to the Entrust environment for securely. And we were able to pass those requests back and forth in fast time and have those requests approved on mobile devices. So this is the middleware piece of it that kind of connects the Microsoft 365 environment to the Entrust environment for mobile e-signatures. And then on the Entrust side is the Identity Guard product. I don't know how familiar anyone is with Entrust, but this is what the Shared Services Canada uses, and a lot of departments use to manage their personal keys required to sign documents. So we just used Identity Guard as the mobile component to talk to MyKey to get account association and personal keys, and make sure that you take that user's personal key and sign the document that they approved on their phone. As you can see at the bottom, it's not required for mobile devices. This solution can integrate directly with the MyKey environment on premise. And then finally, I got a couple of screenshots here of what the mobile device application looks like. It's an app provided by Entrust. When you get a security challenge, you'll see a pop-up up here on your mobile phone that says that you've received a security challenge. You then open your app and have to enter in a personal key, like a 6-digit number, if you will, to authenticate yourself. And then you are provided with the details of the approval request that you just approved. So it's your approval, and you can see what you're approving. And then when you approve it, you get a confirmation challenge summary, if you will, of the fact that you have assigned it, the signing was successful, and it puts a date and timestamp on it. And all of that stuff routes those signatures back to the 365 environment and generates the PDF and inserts the signature in the signatures in the PDF. And this, at the end of all this process, is what a signed document would look like. So as you can see over here on the right hand side, it's got my personal key inserted into the document. This document was generated from the form that was filled in by the end user, and using DocGen from Nintex as the generation tool. So, which is quite handy because you're able to, right from within Word, build these templates that integrate with the forms and workflow environment, insert your dynamic information, and then this just comes along, and as soon as it's approved, it automatically generates these documents. There's nothing more to do for the end user. And then, as I mentioned previously, these signatures are sent out to the mobile devices and approved for signature, sent back, signed. And then finally, I just wanted to point out here, over on the left-hand side, right from within the PDF, and this is probably similar to how it is for my key internally, is that you can see that this is a valid signature. It's validated with the Entrust environment. It tells you when it was last checked, and you can go look at a version of this key if you want to online to be sure. So if anything is altered after the fact this is signed, then this would no longer be valid, and you could use workflow to address what to do after that step. So those are the kind of things now that we're working on moving forward as version 2. There's a whole bunch of new things going on with and what we learned in this project, but we got right to the end of inserting that signature into the document from a mobile device. So highly successful, and everybody was pretty excited to see that, actually. So again, I'm going to come back to the outcomes again here again, and talk about that a little bit more, because obviously in a project like this, there's lots of lessons learned, and those lessons have fed into, improvements in the system, such as, inserting multiple signatures from multiple approvers, and how to handle that, and reduce time for approvals even further. But the big numbers here are on sole source, reducing the process steps by 40%, reducing the completion time by 57%. When you have thousands and thousands of requests that come in every single year, these add up to significant time savings, and you can imagine the kinds of efficiencies you gain from doing something like this. And really, on the classification action requests where digital signatures were required, it greatly simplified the process, and there's more work being done on that side as well, because it was an error-prone process, and there was a lot of back and forth in that particular process, and workflow automation enabled in here was actually able to deal with, even if there was any exceptions to something in this process, that it could automatically go back right away to the person requesting it to fix, or the people in the classification department could actually fix it themselves and notify everyone of what they did to fix that particular error, so that everybody knows, what's going on in the process at all times. And so a lot of good work going forward here, but a lot of good work already done, like a highly successful project, and pretty happy to be a part of it. I wanted to leave a a significant amount of time for questions. I'm not sure, Barry, if you're getting a lot of questions coming.
Well, we got a couple. We got a couple of good ones, and Tim, I'm sure you can answer them. The first one is, why didn't the process include a processing leaning activity prior to automation, as this is the best practice approach? And I'm sure it did. Tim.
Yeah, well, that process leaning, those process leaning activities were actually done in the previous project when they did process improvement on the PDF portion of the process. Mm-hmm. So that was further extended. So look at this as really, even though for like me involved in this was version 1 for me, but for everyone else on this team, it was version 2 of the solution. So version 1 was actually just trying to automate a lot of this stuff and get signatures to work within PDFs on-prem. Additional leaning was done up front before we ever got into building the solution to enable the mobile components and further, I guess, obfuscate some of the rules that were visible in the PDF process.
And some of the things that we are actively involved with when we're doing this with our clients is definitely, we could do advanced training on Nintex, of course, solution implementation, as well as the leaning up front. Something that we highly recommend, of course. Here's a really good question from Robert Tremblay. How shareable are some of the pieces created for this solution that could be leveraged by other departments?
Great question. Yeah, and I didn't cover that at all in the topic here. To add on to the context here, in order to do this in a more rapid fashion, we actually first developed this entire solution in our development environment. So the identity guard, Entrust identity guard, the Microsoft 365, the Nintex, the Azure, all of that was done in a separate development environment. And when that was done, the entire solution was exported and imported into what I would call the staging environment at Shared Services Canada. So that's a very simple process. For the Nintex side of it, it's simply export solution. For the SharePoint side, it's export your lists and libraries as an Excel spreadsheet, and then import that into the new solution, import the Nintex forms, import the Nintex workflow, and everything is there. So that's all reusable. And that was one of the objectives when we started building the solution, was we've got to be able, if we're going to do this in dev, we've got to be able to easily move that to our environment. So that's one, that's that part. And then the Azure part is, that's also, so that's built in Azure Cloud Dev, but that can move into Azure Cloud Staging, Azure Cloud Production, just by simply importing exporting the solution from one environment and importing the other.
All I have to say is, if it's shareable, we would definitely share it with the departments. We'd have to double check with SSC that they're not concerned, but I think they'd be okay with that. Tim, would you agree?
Yeah, I think so, because they've been talking to other departments about what they're doing already, and one of the pluses about this is very shareable. Excellent.
Hey, might have one of those gotcha questions from Jean-Luc. Have you accessed? But why not, right?
Why not?
Have you accessed the signature solution for one out of the 4 levels of assurance from Treasury Board's guidance on using electronic signatures?
For Section 32 and Section 34. Those are the ones we know we've accomplished.
Thank you so much. Thanks, Jean-Luc, for that question. Matthew Nepsey from Treasury Board, as this seems to be creating a new artifact, example, turning a Word document into a PDF before applying the digital signature. Is this creating a net new document in GC Docs, or is it updating the existing with a new version, the signed PDF?
Yeah, the templates are just simply blank templates to use to dynamically insert content into the PDF. So there is no separate generated Word document with content. It's just a blank document with some references to fields in the form that are used to create the PDF.
Super, and
that answers the question.
Thanks. How is the document, this is from Angela Miller, how is the document being moved to GC Docs out of Teams?
The documents, the generated documents aren't being stored in Teams, they're being stored in SharePoint libraries. So it's the process is whatever they're doing today for moving SharePoint to GC Docs, basically.
And SSC has that in place, I think, already.
Yeah,
I believe so. Yeah. Well, there seems to be another question coming fast and furious. From Carol, I'll publish it so we all can see it. Once the document is digitally signed and goes back to SharePoint, is there an automated process to place that signed document into records management repository GC Docs? I would venture to say I'm not sure. I would say that we Orangutech have done that to make sure it is automated. We have a bunch of proof of concepts, pilots, and implementing it. So we could talk through that, Carol, at some point. But Tim, would you know the SSC solution? Is it automated?
Well, I think it's based on retention policies for whatever goes into the official document library that posts that into GC Docs. I can't honestly, we weren't involved in that part of the automation. That's already an existing process. So how that happens, I don't know the exact specifics of in this case, but like Barry said, we've done this for clients before, and those automation processes are already available.
And Angela Miller, to confirm, this is using Nintex cloud version.
Nintex for 365, but this solution will work on-prem.
Sure, absolutely. When signing a document out for signature, are you able to attach supporting documentation? When sending a document for signature, are you able to attach supporting documentation? Sorry, repeating the question twice.
Yeah, so in that case, and I didn't talk about this during the presentation either, but what happens in the notification process is any of the relevant information that is required to approve a request is sent in the notification. And the reason that we weren't sending attachments was because there wasn't a big desire to open up PDFs on mobile devices. However, if you want to go in and look at that supporting documentation, there is a link in the notification that takes you back to the Microsoft 365 environment to read the original. But anything that was required to make the approval is included in the notification. So you get a notification with a adaptive card up front that says all the options about approve, rejected, requires further information, and then below that is a summary of all the required information needed to make an approval.
So Andrew, I think that answers your question. When sending a document out for a signature, are you able to attach supporting documentation to the form that is signed for user to be able to view before signing? Yes.
Yeah,
right?
So the answer is yes. And in fact, in the classification action request, there is a mandatory to attach an org chart to that request. So that is part of the form at the bottom, and that is reviewable, or that is visible to the approver if they just click on a link.
Super. And this is from Robert Trombley. Is it possible, and I believe it is, to have a process that requires more than one signature?
Yes.
Super. It looks like I got one. Is this platform agnostic for mobile, i.e. iOS or Android?
That's a great question. It is agnostic. It works on, successfully tested on both iOS and Android mobile devices. It is agnostic in the way that you can receive the notifications in mail clients, and you can approve requests, and you can sign on either one of those device platforms. However, what is important to note here is that, and I might have made reference to it in the slides, but I didn't talk about it specifically, Outlook mobile client, which some which maybe some departments haven't approved yet for use with mobile devices, that mobile app enables the adaptive card functionality, if you will. So it's required for viewing the adaptive card in the notification. So if you don't have it, then, and you're using a native email client, then what you get is all the request information is normal. And then rather than clicking a button to approve or reject, you just reply to the email, approve or reject. That's the only difference.
And one last question, I think, is the built automation solution easily converted to another product? For example, Power Apps, Blue Prism, UiPath examples. You'd almost reverse that question. You know, the other way to think of it too, Ranjay, and I appreciate you asking it, is are Power Apps, Blue Prism, UiPath automations easily converted to other platforms as well? So I think that's, I don't know, Tim, you know, you really, as well, you know, sorry, go ahead, Tim.
Yeah, I was going to say, I mean, the short answer is no, because like, what are you going to build the UI component of this in the Power Automate apps world? This is built in eForms, and our apps platform is entirely different. The work that goes into all the logic around, you know, rules-based stuff and so on, that's certainly helpful. Yeah, but you would need to build it separately in that and other platforms.
Hey, I want to thank everybody. We have 3 minutes. Tim, phenomenal job. Jess, thank you so much from Nintex. Before you dial out, everyone, as I mentioned in the published questions, for demos, please reach out to Eric Hine. He's our strategic partner manager, eric.hine@orangutech.com. We could demo Nintex. We could demo the SSC solution in completely. You know, I was talking to a CIO. I meant to say this at the beginning. Just last week, one of our large CIO, and he said, Barry, I have 20 signatures. I need 20 emails a day that I have to sign. They're all, whether I have to print it, sign it, scan it, whether it's an e-signature, there's all different methods on each one of them. Each one of them takes me approximately 2 minutes. So I did the math. I know we all sounds like, well, that's only 40 minutes a day. I did the math. That's 4 weeks out of a 48-week period. I'm assuming he takes 4 weeks holidays a year. So it's 4 weeks out of his 48. If we could get that down 50%, which is the significant changes that Tim showed, then we would save him and many other departments and many other employees in that department, you know, 2 weeks worth of time. So thank you very much. Ranjay says, fair point. I would love to see the process design documents and supporting documents. Thank Ranjay. By all means, reach out to Eric and we can walk through that. We've got some great methodologies. Again, one more time, Government of Canada IT team, you guys are awesome. You've really killed it the last 7 months. Keep it up. If Orangutech can help, reach out to us. And we're having another seminar next week. We're looking forward to it. Everyone take care. And again, presenters Tim, Jess, Nintex, thank you so much. Have a great day. We've saved everybody 1 minute of their time. Take care, everybody. Bye. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Bye.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.